Welcome. Welcome to another conversation with Rama Vaidyanathan, who is one of our featured artists for Anvesana, our digital festival that will be premiering on May the 8th. This is an opportunity for all our friends and viewers to get a chance to get into the mind of our artists. And this time it's Rama Vaidyanathan and her new work, Moving Boundaries, a commissioned work by Sampradaya Dance Creations. And it's a delight to have Rama Vaidyanathan from Delhi speaking with us this morning, and an opportunity to discover her process and her reflections in solitude, as the title says, Anvesana, Reflections in Solitude. And the pandemic has been an opportunity for all artists to reflect on their art. So welcome, Rama, and thank you.
Thank you, Akka. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, well, it's your acceptance of our invitation was so spontaneous and so generous. So along with Bijoyini Satpathy, Methil Devika in Mohiniyattam, and Aditi Mangaldas, we're so proud at Sampradaya Dance Creations that each of you has accepted our invitation as commissioned artists to create new works for this festival. So I'd love to have this chance to converse with you this morning and get a little deeper into your process. But first and foremost, do tell me what this last year and almost a half has been for you.
It has been a year of change, as it has been for everybody, Akka, as you know, and especially for us dancers. Amidst all the disillusionment and amidst all the panic and amidst all the loss of so much, loss of finance, loss of life, loss of inspiration, loss of motivation. There have been so many losses. Amidst all of this, I think it has dance that has kept all us dancers to wake up in the morning and to have a purpose in life despite the pandemic. So I chose to harness this particular aspect, and I chose to delve deep into my dance during the past year because one gets so busy and caught up in rehearsals and travel and tours and performance-based practice, performance-oriented practice, like there is this performance and you have to rehearse for it, and there's this particular new composition that you have to work on, there's a deadline, there's an agenda that you have to present it for this particular performance. So it's always oriented towards performance. But then this last 1 year, I chose to take this year to look at dance without all these deadlines and without agenda, and walk into the dance studio just for the sake of dance. So I would say it was like a honeymoon with my dance. I mean, this me, the me time that you have with your lover when you go on a honeymoon. So that's exactly what happened to me. And moving boundaries is an outcome of that, literally reflections in solitude.
Wonderful. Well, I think you're so right. You're so right. For most artists, it's been a great time of reflection, introspection, and an opportunity to discover what dance really means. And you're such a busy artist, Rama. I mean, all of us who follow you and know you, you live on a treadmill of performances, really a roller coaster. I mean, we can't keep up with your busy national and international schedule of performances, workshops, and of course your teaching schedule. Uh, but you did not find it confining in any way. Did you find it? Did you find a lack of motivation at times? This is what I think many of the younger dancers would like to know, how you fought the sense of hopelessness and how you combated the lethargy and the darkness that was enveloping all of us.
To be honest, Akka, I have to tell you that, of course, despite the, you know, the despair that we all went through emotionally, knowing what has been happening in the world, and people have lost their, relatives, and there have been artists who didn't have money to uh, for their next meal. Despite all of that, and one did get into initiatives to help such artists. So, you feel that you've done something for artists who need help. Despite all of that, I have to tell you that I have actually been in bliss. It has been really blissful and peaceful to get this time. And as I said, and I keep telling my students also, uh, take this time. I mean, take it, do not leave it, seize it, seize this time. This time will not come to you again. Might as well use this time to achieve higher levels of excellence, higher levels of emotional spaces that you can get into through your dance. And so we need to seize this opportunity. I think that's the only way out, to look at how you can turn a lost opportunity to an opportunity that you can use. And we need to be positive minded to think of that. So that's exactly what I did, and that's exactly what I motivated my students and everybody who comes into my contact. I try to motivate them to stay this way.
That is such a beautiful message, and I think it's truly inspiring for many of the artists who have gone into dejection, and I think uh, they felt that there was nobody that they could turn to. They have stopped creating and gone into, I hear, deep depression because they've lost opportunities, they've lost their income. Has there been a sense of solidarity between artists reaching out to each other, or have people gone into their own cocoons trying to figure out their lives? I know that across globally, artists have tried to form collectives, form some kind of global forums to try and encourage each other and to try and find new collaborative ways of staying in touch, not so much artistically, but at least to stay in touch, to let each other know that we're all in it together. In India, has there been that kind of a reaching out and peer-to-peer contact?
There has been. There have been several initiatives where we have come together to pool in our resources to help others. There have also been initiatives of, just these webinar talks when you all get in, online, and you discuss and you talk and you speak your mind. I think that's important because you're not meeting each other physically, and just looking at each other, even if it is on the screen, and talking, and maybe even arguing, and not even agreeing to each other's point of view, but that's okay. I think whatever this has sparked, these webinars have sparked, I think it's important, it's interesting, and it's needed. This dialogue needs to go on, and because dancers cannot, like you said, cooped up, they need to reach out. And a dancer, I think, each dancer, I feel, represents the universe. And during the pandemic, if she's going to be inside the house, And how do you connect with the universe? And these online webinars, I feel, have been very, very good, and they have really instigated a lot of discussion, a lot of argument. I think it is all for the good.
Absolutely. I've seen many of these panels and they have raised issues, they've raised topics
Yes.
we generally don't come together on. And I've seen you on many of them. And I think certainly the pandemic has raised the opportunity for these kinds of discussions that we normally don't have time for. We're also busy with our creation and touring and performances. So now let's get to the central topic, moving boundaries. What is it about? Tell us about the concept, the creation, and tell us a little more of what we might see.
Okay. So, Akka, I have always been interested and intrigued with the concept of unlearning, and
Mm,
in my case, unlearning dance. And I think unlearning is an imperative process of learning. And it is important to go through that process. And that can happen, unlearning can happen only if I am aware of my boundaries. Only if I'm able to dialogue with my boundaries, if I'm able to negotiate with my boundaries.
mm,
And what are these boundaries? These boundaries are rules set up by the dance form, tenets given to me by my predecessors, and conventions and conformed systems of beliefs, of movement, of anything that encompasses Bharatanatyam. So, unlearning means constantly looking at boundaries around you which keep changing. For example, when I was young, the boundaries that did not exist for me now, because there is a sense of physicality which I had in my 20s. And when I'm in my 50s, my physical agility is not as it was in my 20s. So the boundaries which I did not even see when I was in my 20s, in my 50s, I see these boundaries. So I need to negotiate with them. Similarly, when I was much younger, if my boundaries were a little more with a microscopic view. As I grow older, my vision becomes more macroscopic, and therefore boundaries dissolved. So the boundaries that I had when I was young do not appear right now when I'm older. So I think these they keep oscillating around us, and they keep flowing, they keep moving, and it is up to us to be aware of these boundaries. And I think that is the first and foremost step towards unlearning. And that is what I have tried to show in this composition. And the biggest takeaway of moving boundaries, I would say, is that boundaries do not restrict, but they liberate. Now,
mm.
that's quite a dichotomy. How can you have boundaries? How can you have rules and then still feel liberated, still have that sense of freedom? And that's exactly what I'm trying to show in the piece, because it's all about how my perspective towards these boundaries are, and how do I deal with them, and when do I deal with them, and how do I involve it in my dance. So basically, it's very biographical. It's literally a personal journey that I've had with my dance, and that's what I've tried to show in Moving Boundaries.
Right, right. I am really intrigued by your saying you're negotiating with your boundaries, and it's um, it's something that is a very wise way of dealing um, with an artist's journey. In as you say, when you are at a different phase in your life as an artist, and yet your creativity is boundless, and you recognize your physicality, your state of your state of ability, and yet your ability to dream the possibilities is never been better at this point. And you're negotiating. So give me an example with any one of the pieces, how you unlearned and then negotiated and reworked the piece. Just an example.
Okay. So, for example, I feel that dealing with these boundaries, negotiating with these boundaries, they only trigger your imagination and they only help you to broaden the canvas and to widen your vision. And like I said, they don't restrict, but they restrain. And the metaphor that I've tried to use for this is that of the kite. So, yes, the kite. So the kite is free flowing in the sky. And if you just look at the kite in the sky, you will see it's soaring high and it's got no limits. It's boundless. Boundlessly, it is flying in the sky, but it is being held with a very thin string by a person standing on the ground. So this whole process of the kite flying and me trying to negotiating with it and trying to hold it, I think is what we go through always, because I am the kite and the person holding the thread and controlling me is my dance. And it's like the tayate that we do in Bharatanatyam. I feel that the Tayati is like my roots. In one of the sections of the teaser, I have my ear to the ground and I'm trying to listen. So I'm actually trying to listen to the Tayya Tay, because with the Tayya Tay, I can do so many things with Tayate. But finally, I have to come back to that Tayate, listening to it through the roots of the ground. So the point I'm trying to make is that Tayatai has boundless possibilities, but it is a border, it is a boundary that I need to keep in mind, because that is always going to be there, like a sthai in my dance. So these are the things which I negotiated and try to bring out in. And the other thing I want to say here is, Akka, there is absolutely the whole presentation is extremely secular. That's another thing that I have been thinking about a lot, making our dance secular and not always attaching it to a specific religion or to a specific god, because I think Bharatanatyam as a dance form is a very strong medium of communication, and we do not need to dovetail it to a specific religion to showcase it. Of course, I adore, I love doing you know typical Margam compositions, which are based on the doctrines of Hinduism and gods and goddesses. But this particular composition, this particular work is very secular. Even though I've used words from Tirumular's Tirumandiram, the Shaiva saint, and he wrote in Tamil. But when you look at the verses and when he speaks about Shiva, you understand that, when you look at the verses closely, you understand that it's not just only Shiva, it's actually dance. Because dance can be my Shiva, dance can be my truth, dance can be my God. So here, the God, the central piece, the central person here, the God is dance. So you can say dance is the hero here and I'm the heroine. So that is how I have visualized moving boundaries.
And you said something very, very important when you were using the metaphor of the kite. It is your years of sadhana, your years of immersion in the art form, It is about the kite soaring high, but it is not soaring high without control. Your discipline, your groundedness, your maturity in the art form is holding it back. So, in the hands of someone less grounded and mature in the hand, that kite can go completely out of control. And if it is within a competition with other kite flyers, it can get totally devastated and come plummeting to the ground. So it is your control, it is your sky that is holding it in, in complete, it's not in abandon up there in the sky. So the unlearning and the learning and the holding it in that control is a message that the deconstruction and the reconstruction that you have gone through in this process is only something one should attempt when you have mastery over the form.
Oh,
And,
yes.
and it's not to be attempted when one is not mature and one doesn't have the foundation. You know, just like the tayate, when you're working with it, you have that foundation, that strength, that connection with the ground, with the earth. And so when you listen to it, when your ear is close to the ground, you're feeling that connection. One needs to have those years of sadhana, that year, the groundedness. And so that was for me, that sounded like a very important message, and the
Yes,
metaphor.
and yes, and Tirumular says it in the Tirumandiram. He says, "Adangada yennai adakki adi vaitida." Adangada yennai. I was uncontrollable, and I was just going haywire. And adakki adi vaitida. He is the one who controlled me, and he is the one who brought me to to uh, to a path that will take me to liberation. So I think this is perfect for dance because I can tend to get uncontrollable, but what controls me is my dance. Finally, I and my dance is within me. So the
Right,
controlled and the uncontrolled, the controller and the uncontrolled are actually both within me. I have to negotiate. So these are again boundaries of
right,
how I negotiate this being uncontrolled and then being controlled. So I show that in the composition, that in the work, that how I can get uncontrolled and how I get completely controlled because of that sense of sadhana, like you said. It's the sense of sadhana which is ultimately going to control you. But I will not even use the word control because I feel even that sense of control is liberating.
yes, yes,
I've tried to show that. I've tried to show how boundaries can liberate and not restrain.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And you're coming from the position of a dancer who has evolved, who has worked with the art form with years of training, years of uh, deep introspection, and that's why you're discovering the liberation that you're getting from it. So, tell me something about your collaborators, because it seems like it's a work that I know Sudhara Raguraman is somebody that you have worked with very closely, and she is a person who I know works very intuitively with the ideas that you have. So I'd love to hear about and a brilliant vocalist and collaborators. Love to hear
Yes,
more.
she is. Yes. So Sudha has been working with me for several years and she really understands me and she understands my dance. And it is very, very easy for me to work with her. And it's very easy for me to speak to her about my concepts and about my vision. And she gets it very soon. And then she tries to bring in all this into the music that she composes, even the ragas that she chooses. She doesn't choose them randomly. She chooses them according to the verse, according to the interpretation, according to what I do, how I do it. So, and again, we had a lot of time. So we spent a lot of, you gave us this project well in advance. So I had a lot of time, and we had the luxury of time. And I think that is very, very important for any commissioned work, to have that time. So we had this time to work with each other. And so she has been one of the major, major collaborators of Moving Boundaries, and she's done a fantastic job. Absolutely. And my other two important collaborators, I would say, is one is Gyan Dev, who designed the lights. And
Mm.
since this was for the camera, a lot of my choreography has been suited for the camera.
Mm.
And a lot of angles, and the lights that he designed was suited for the camera.
Well, this is what makes dance so evocative, so completely
Yes,
poetic.
absolutely. And yes,
Mm.
and Gyan Dev did a fantastic job with the lights, and especially, boundaries. He actually brought in boundaries with lights
Exciting.
very beautifully. And he also understood, what I had to communicate. And my third collaborator, equally important, is the cameraman and the person who's going to do the editing, literally the cinematographer that you would say. So that is Ini Singh, and he has been doing a lot of videos lately, and he has been working with me for a long time during the pandemic. So he too understands. So we did a 4 camera setup,
Wonderful.
and with different angles, and the editing is going to be interesting. And finally, I think the finished product will look. I hope what I really want to communicate will come through. But these three collaborators, Sudha Raghuraman, Gyan Dev, and Ini Singh, have done an exemplary job and supported me and understood me so well and given me their full artistic brilliance they have put into this. So I'm extremely grateful to all three of them for bringing light to Moving Boundaries.
Well, you've chosen the best of the best, and this is going to, it's a work of art. I mean, one cannot say enough about having to work with the best collaborators, because dance
Absolutely.
just gets these multi dimensions when you bring in all this. It's not just about going. I mean, this is what wonderful choreographers like you and all the other artists who are going to be part of Anvesana have invested so much into the production values, into working with the best composers. It's such a treat, and this is what makes Anvesana so very exciting for Sampradaya.
Absolutely.
We're just so delighted and so grateful that you have understood and of course that's the way you work, and that's why we were excited to invite you all. So
Thank you.
it's just very exciting. So now tell me about your own relationship to dance. One can't talk enough about your absolute control over the art form. And what is your relationship to dance? I know that you have a daily routine with dance, endless hours of practice. To talk about what you would say to younger dancers about, it's wonderful to see Rama on stage and talk about her virtuosity, her physicality, her creativity, because even if it's a amalgam composition, there you bring in so many different facets that one can't imagine that a traditional composition can, can come up with. Your interpretations of the same sahitya that people work with all the time. That means your devotion, your inner search for even those traditional compositions, let alone your new work. What would you say is that inner search, your connection, that causes you to be the artist that you are?
I think the most important thing for that inner search is to understand that the dance is bigger than me, the art is bigger than me, and I need to have that kind of a view towards my dance. I mean, like the way we would look at a huge, like at the foothill, stand and look up at the Himalayas, and you feel so small, and the Himalayas are so big. Or when you go and stand in front of the Sannidhanam of a temple and look at the idol inside, and you at that moment you feel you are the small and that Lord is the big. I think that kind of an attitude, perspective towards our dance is very, very important. And the minute we have that attitude towards dance, the inner journey begins. And when that inner journey begins, I feel that we become all encompassing. We kind of represent the universe. And coming back to moving boundaries, the boundaries between stage and sphere, basically boundaries between my stage and this universe. Where does the boundary end, or is there a boundary? Where does my stage end? Does my stage end where the stage really ends, or of course physically my stage ends there because I know if I jump off, I'm in the first row. But does my physically, that is where my stage ends, but emotionally, where does my stage end? Emotionally, my stage has to be limitless. The dancing arena for me has to be limitless. And so the boundaries between stage and the universe, they have to dissolve. And that can happen if I try to represent the universe within me when I dance. And I think that is all about, that's what we talk about, self realization and understanding yourself in philosophy. And I think dance teaches us philosophy. Dance teaches us to be aware of yourself and of yourself as a human being. And I think that is what dance has taken me to.
That is
I
such a...
feel I feel even when we are outside the stage, we are dancing.
Rama, sorry, could you move a little closer? I believe your mic is echoing. Come just a little
Oh,
closer. Yeah. Oh, you're wearing headphones? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's echoing, I believe, just a little bit. Yeah.
Is that okay now?
Sure. I believe so. Yes. Yeah. Um,
Okay.
that that is coming from a position of humility, Rama, when you understand that the dance is bigger than yourself, and understanding that you're not dancing for anything else but to surrender to the art form, to feel blessed for having been, chosen to be on this journey of this art form that has been part of a tradition for centuries, and that you're only part of this journey, this continuum that will go on for many more centuries. But most importantly, it's a position of Sharanagati to the art form. And but it truly is from a position of humility, which we all artists need to inculcate in ourselves. So that was so profound and so beautiful. And one can see that. One can see that in your dance, in your attitude towards dance. What do you see for the future now, while the pandemic is still raging? And just some last thoughts about what we can do now, continue to do, and the future for dance, because we're all so concerned, so anxious about whether audiences will return to theater, to auditoriums, to performances. We're all concerned whether digital performances are going to be the way forward. And maybe you can't predict it because we don't know when the pandemic will end. But what can we do in the meantime?
I think during the pandemic, when there has been a lot of dance online, am I still echoing?
I believe it's better. Is it better? Yes, it's better. Thank you.
So during the pandemic, when there's been a lot of dance online, I believe that dance has reached out to an audience who has never ever stepped into a theater to watch dance.
Mm.
That is the kind of outreach this pandemic has had for dance, for classical dance.
Mm.
I've seen it myself. I've seen youngsters who are either, completely different professions, or even contemporary dancers who will never watch classical dance, have started watching it only because it's right there. And you start watching it, or you start watching it and then you start watching it more, and it's right there in your face the minute you open social media. So I think it has reached out to a very, very different kind of audience, and I think we needed this, because we cannot have the same old people walking into a dance performance. We need to reach out to different audiences. So after the pandemic, I am hopeful that these new entrants into the dance world will get inspired to come into the theater to watch live performances. So I think that has been a good. The other thing that I've noticed is it has given opportunities to young dancers who don't have the resources or who do not have the connections to get performances, but they're good, they're hardworking, they're well trained, they're dedicated. So everybody has been able to showcase their dance. And so this has been, I think, a windfall for young dancers. This has been very good because, you know, young dancers were kind of feeling that they don't get enough opportunities before the pandemic. And look what has happened now. So
Right.
many opportunities, yes. So this hybrid will definitely continue of live performances and online performances. But I would say that it is only for the good for dance, because everything happens for a reason and everything evolves organically. And if there has been an overkill of dance on social media during the pandemic, that is also a very, very organic process, and we need to go through this.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I am quite positive about the future of dance.
Well, that ends on a very optimistic note, and I think the hybrid model is perhaps the model that we will have to consider. Rama, can you take your mic off? I think that's what's causing. Thank you. So now we will. Yeah, that is a practical way of looking at what will evolve going forward. We will now be taking some questions. I think there's been quite a few that have come through. Sorry.
Better now?
Oh,
Is it?
sorry, we didn't talk about the video. Can we now have a glimpse of your work that you've been
Yes,
in rehearsal?
right.
So then we'll probably have questions arising from that as well. So let's have the video now. Thank you. Thank you. Sudha's voice is so
Yes,
powerful. Yes.
because she's home and then back she sung a dance for it. Really, really beautiful.
Truly, truly. So I think we can have our questions. I believe there are several. So I think they will appear at the bottom of the screen. And
Okay, so how do we for the next 10 years? I have admit
sorry, you're cutting out, and you're cutting out, Rama.
oh really?
Yeah. Okay.
Is it okay now?
It's a little better. Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have to admit and I have to confess that I'm quite optimist. So if you're going to ask me about what Bharatanatyam is going to be after 10 years, I have a very rosy picture of what Bharatanatyam is going to be because I feel that we have, because what Bharatanatyam is going to be after 10 years is going to be in the hands of the young generation today. And I have a lot of hope on the young generation. I feel that they are very dedicated, they're very focused, and they know what they want, and they know how to get what they want. And they have a genuine desire to learn, assimilate, and to reconstruct and deconstruct what they've learned to suit themselves. So I think the evolution process is going to be um, very detailed, and it's going to encompass the larger and larger the community is growing day by day, not just dancers, but also the choreographers, the presenters, um, the people, the technical staff, so, and of course the audience. So I'm positive. what's going to happen to Bharatanatyam after 10 years. My opinion of teaching Bharatanatyam to today's generation of children across the globe. Oh, yes, I think we need to reinvent teaching skills. For example, now when I'm teaching the Shabdam where Krishna steals the gopis' clothes and puts them up on top of a tree and tells them that you need to get up without your clothes on, and you need to get up from the bed and do namaskaram to me, and only then will I give you the clothes. Now that is a violation if you really look at it, because we grew up with these stories and we just took them for granted. And it's only later on when you start reading about the philosophies and about the symbolism behind these stories that you realize why these stories exist. So I need to tell my students that Krishna did that to tell the gopis that the body is your biggest ego. And the minute you forego the ego, the presence of your body, and surrender to the supreme truth, it's only then will you achieve self realization. It's only then will you be on the path of self discovery. So, Krishna stealing the gopis' clothes is symbolic of that. And I need to tell my students this because they're going to ask me questions. They're going to ask me, why did you do that? That's not right. How can you do it? So these these questions do come out, and we need to reinvent and rethink concepts before we teach it to our children. So, frankly, there is a difference, as I see it, between a traditional work or a contemporary work, because even when I do a traditional Varnam, I think it's contemporary because I'm doing it today. I'm a contemporary dancer of today's time. So I do not distinction between traditional work and contemporary work because when the language is same, when I'm not changed the language of Bharatanatyam, when the medium of communication is remains Bharatanatyam, uh, so there is no way, there is no reason I need to change my treatment or my perception. So for me, there are no boundaries, so to speak, between traditional work and contemporary work. Any tips on choreographing for a contemporary theme with a traditional art form? How does your mind space work in such situations? I think the most important thing for us dancers is to be very, very aware and alert of the world around us. We cannot have a microscopic view of the world. We need to have a very, very broadened vision, a macroscopic view of the world. And that will help in contemporary work because, uh, but I think before that, it is very important to choreograph hundreds of compositions within the margam. It's very important. Anybody who is setting out to choreograph, please make sure that you first choreograph several compositions within the margam and then walk into a contemporary theme, a space with a contemporary theme. And for that, I think the first and foremost, of course, like Lata said, the sadhana and the depth of training and learning and the conviction that you have with your dance form, that remaining, of course, that is a given. But I think the most important thing is to be a global citizen, to be a human being of this today's world, of being aware of what is happening around you, and of being aware of literature and poetry and painting and sculpture and nature and human behavior. So many things that we need to study, which will hone our skills in choreography.
Thank you, Rama. Thank you. So we've come to the end of our lovely conversation, and I hope our friends who've been watching have taken away some valuable insights into your personal creative process, your personal um, attitude on dance, your discoveries that you've made creating this work. And I'm sure they'll be looking forward to the whole festival that premieres on May the 8th. And next Saturday is a conversation with Aditi Mangaldas at the same time. So please watch out for that. And thank you. Thank you, Rama, for taking time out. And
And best wishes for Anvesana. Fantastically curated festival with the other three artists are wonderful artists. And I'm so excited and look forward to watching their work. And thank you so much for making me part of Anvesana.
thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now. So, friends, thank you for taking the time out today, and hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Rama Vaidyanathan. And please look out for our Facebook and Instagram postings on the entire festival that premieres on May the 8th. All details are on Chalet. And next week, another interesting conversation with Aditi Mangaldas. Thank you.